Donald Trump hush money trial here in New York City. Trump, of course, the former president and the first former president to go on trial and face criminal charges. It's been getting underway today. Jeffrey Jacobovitz is joining us now, criminal defense attorney, adjunct professor at American. It's nice to have you on, Jeff, to talk a little bit more about what, no matter what you say, is historic. Because we've never seen this before with the former president, and we even see it in the jury selection. I want to ask you in a moment what your strategy might be as a defense lawyer, but what about, so many of these jurors, from what we've been told over the last hour or so, are just getting excused right away. They say, I can't be impartial. They say, all right, you're out. Is that normally how it works? Because it's how it's working today.
Connell, actually my experience is jurors tend to be impartial and tend to render a fair verdict. This is a scenario that's really different than any other we've seen, because no former president has ever been charged with a crime. In fact, no former president has been charged in 4 different criminal proceedings. And so the judge has to be very meticulous in terms of trying to seek a fair jury, and there's a long series of questions designed to do that.
Yeah, we were looking at some of them earlier. Some of them were specific, of course, to Trump, whether you've gone to a rally of his and whether you support him politically or you're against him politically, and what kind of news sources you have, all this kind of thing. Let's look at the charges that Trump is facing. 34 counts of falsifying business records, that payment, 130 grand or so, that Michael Cohen, his fixer, was supposedly passed on to the former porn star Stormy Daniels so she would keep quiet about an alleged relationship with Trump. He says, no, I haven't been involved in any of this. How would you defend him? I'm sure you love being asked that question, but you've been in cases where you have to come up with a strategy. What's the best strategy here to defend Trump?
Sure. Well, I think the strategy would not be that it didn't happen, because there's corroborating evidence from Michael Cohen that in fact it happened. And the strategy will not be put Donald Trump on the stand, because I think that could be devastating to Donald Trump. And frequently when criminal defendants testify, it's not good for that defendant. What we have here is not an unusual case coming out of the New York DA's office. You have falsifying business records, and it leads to the underlying felony of a campaign finance violation and a number of counts. And so what you have is really an argument by the DA that it's election interference. And what Donald Trump will have to try to show that he wasn't in fact interfering with the election, that maybe he was trying to hide it from Melania or whatever other reason he can come up with, that his lawyers will argue in good faith, obviously, because I would say that this is a pretty strong case. And I think the best chances that Donald Trump has is if he gets a jury to nullify whatever the facts show and nullify the verdict. If you have a strong Trump supporter on the jury and he can not go along with the evidence, that's something that would hang up a jury and lead to a mistrial.
All right, so a mistrial, hung jury, maybe the strategy for him. I was kind of chuckling to myself as you were talking, because 2 things. You say he shouldn't testify. He said he will. I mean, his plan is to testify, right? I don't know if we'll find it, but I think we have a piece in the Washington Post, but I'll read from it either way, about his trial strategy in the hush money case, according to their reporting: deny, delay, and denigrate. But what they write specifically is that his strategy is unique from the other 3 cases in that he does aim to deny involvement in the key conversations about hush money payments made by Michael Cohen. So essentially, he is going to say that it didn't happen, at least that he wasn't involved in it.
Well, there is a tape, though, where he talks about cash, using cash, and that will be very harmful to Donald Trump. And so, what is he using cash about? What is he denying? That could be very difficult. And, Michael Cohen is a convicted perjurer. And so the cross-examination of him could really help Donald Trump. There's a lot out there that you could cross him about.
Not your best star witness, right? A guy who's been convicted of perjury, if you had to pick.
Right, he's the best star witness. However, cases have been won with convicted perjurers, and the government finds their witnesses how they find them. And in fact, he testified previously, and a New York judge credited his testimony recently. I believe it was Judge Engeron in the civil case. And so that will be an avenue that Trump will pursue, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he will be successful with it.
Well, thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.